Hey guys, welcome back to the series and this awaited video of a roadmap to Android application development. So the topics that we will be covering in this video are basically the available tools for Android application developments and which one you should choose, and the roadmap to the application development. So let's get straight to it. The most popular available tools in the market right now are Ionic, Flutter, React Native, and the native Android SDK. Now, Ionic is a cross-platform development framework, which basically means that using Ionic you can deploy your apps both on iOS and Android. It is free and open source, certified by MIT, which allows developers to use modern web technologies. And Ionic was built for developers to build hybrid and interactive mobile applications. Now let's see the next one, which is Flutter. Now Flutter is a new sheriff in town, but is already very popular among the developers. It is also a free open source mobile SDK developed by Google to build applications with a slightly different approach than its other competitors in the market right now. And Flutter also uses its own language, which is Dart, which was also developed by Google. Now the next framework is React. Now React Native is the 8th most loved cross-platform application development framework out there, and there are many developers who like to use React. You'd be shocked to know that the platform actually started out as an inside hackathon project at Facebook in 2013 and then was later released as an open source cross-platform development framework in 2015. Since it's developed by Facebook, it is regarded as one of the best open source software available for mobile application development. And then finally, we have our native Android framework, which is liked by many and is amongst the oldest frameworks out there. And these are just the first 5 most popular frameworks out there. There are many other frameworks that we haven't even talked of. So which one should you choose? So in the beginning, we would recommend that you go with the native Android SDK. Now why the native Android SDK? The reason being that since the native Android SDK is one of the oldest one, it has the strongest community out there. And another reason is that it is only for native Android, unlike these other 3 platforms which can be used, which are used to deploy for both iOS and Android. But wait, isn't that a good thing that we can deploy both on iOS and Android? Well, yeah, it is better, but then it also increases complexities which you as a beginner need not deal with. So we would suggest that you go with native Android SDK, which is present in the normal Android Studio. So so with our tools settled, let's go to the roadmap and see what we need to learn. So let's say that here a learner starting to tinker with Android development. So what should you do to begin with Android development? First is pick a language. Now we told you to use a native Android SDK, right? But then again, this SDK meaning software development kit, can be programmed using 2 programming languages, that is Java or Kotlin. Now Java is one of the oldest languages, while Kotlin is a newer language that helps you write precise code. Again, we have a decision to make. So which one to pick? So here again, we would recommend that you go with Java, solely because it has a stronger community, and also Java could be a great starting language if you are totally new to programming, since it would also help you learn other concepts of programming such as data structures and algorithms, and could also be used for exploring other avenues of programming such as web development or GUI making. GUI meaning graphical user interface. So here again we would recommend that you go with Java. And also if you start learning with Java, you can always switch back to Kotlin as you can easily transfer from Java to Kotlin. And so if Java is so good, then why learn Kotlin anyway? So the reason to learn Kotlin is that being a newer language, you can write more precise code with better accuracy. And also Google has declared Kotlin as one of the primary languages for Android development. First, it was considered a secondary language when it was initially brought to programmers and developers, but now it has been made a primary language. Okay, so I have a language in my head, so now what to do? So the next step is to understand the fundamentals. So to begin with, install the Android Studio and understand what file structure is there in Android Studio. Where does your app actually sit? Not just in your computer, but also in an app. There are different files for every type of thing. So what file has what is what you need to know. Apart from that, also learn the basics of the programming language that you have selected, Java or Kotlin. Then learn basics of OOPS. OOPS means object-oriented programming. Now you do not need to be very good at object-oriented programming, but you need to have a primary knowledge, some fundamentals, so that you are able to make basic apps. So basically you need some knowledge of classes and objects, and how if you are given a scenario of a real life example, how would you make classes to represent the real life objects. So basic knowledge of OOPS is more than enough. Apart from that, you also need some knowledge of data structures and algorithms. Now you do not need to go into the fancy stuff, but a basic knowledge is necessary so that you can store the data in an efficient manner. Apart from that, you also need to know what is Gradle and how to use it. So Gradle basically is a build system in Android Studio, and I won't tell you much more about it because it is a homework for you. But it is also important to know this, which is ignored by many beginners in Android development. They do not peek under the hood to see what really happens, and this is something that is important to know. So let's move on to the next step. Now, with fundamentals in our bag, what else? So next step would be to learn version control. So version control, if you don't know what version control is, version control helps you manage your projects and apps in a better manner. So in that, what you need to know is you need to learn how to use Git. You to begin with need to know what version control is, and also why should you use a version control. Isn't it just okay to make an app inside your computer? Well, yeah, it's totally okay, but learning version control and Git would really help you out in further making your apps much more manageable. So now let's go to the next step. Next step is looking for repository hosting sites. Well, repositories are basically folders which house your projects. Now the version control that you learned before, that can be stored on internet using these repository hosting sites. So again, there are different sites such as GitHub, Gitbucket and Bitbucket. You can choose whatever site you feel most comfortable with. All you need to do is just create an account and you can upload your projects to it. The next step is conceptualizing your project. Let's say you have the idea in mind. So now what most of the programmers do is that they directly start coding. But before you start coding, it is important to conceptualize what your app would look like. So basically think how you want your application to look like. What features do you want to include in your application? Make a list of it before you start actually coding anything, before you even start with a template code. And also make a wireframe of your application. This part is mostly ignored by beginners or students who are just getting into programming, and but this trust me, saves you a lot of time in future. So wireframing is basically a way to see what your GUI would look like. And I know you're not your developers, your coders, but this will save you a lot of time in the future. The next step, now that we know how our app is going to look like, we need to build applications layout. So the application that you build, just like in web development, can be segregated a bit into two parts, which is the look and feel, or the UI, user interface of the application, and the logic behind the application. So here the layout would be where the buttons would go. Let's say you're making a calculator app, where would the buttons go, and where would be the proper positioning of which operator button is what you will decide and make or build in the layout. If you're using Android Studio, this is done using the programming language called XML, and in Android Studio it is really easy. You can just drag and drop stuff. And yeah, some of the things that you should know is types of layouts, views and elements. Now, what is intents, list view, and recycle view. Recycler view is a comparatively newer view, and it's really important to know what it is. Then building flexible interfaces using fragments here being the main concept that you should know. Then dialogues, toast, and bottom sheets. Bottom sheets are basically the small pop-ups that you get when you swipe up from the bottom of your phone. Then we have the navigation drawer, and then we have tabs and material design. Material design is something really good if you know, and also inserting animations. These last two things aren't really very necessary, but are really helpful if you want to make a great looking app. So this was all about the layout and the UI of the app. So now let's go to the next part, which is the logic building part. So now that you have all your UI in place, let's say you have a button, but right now the button does not know what to do when you press it. So that is the logic part that we built after that. So this part is the part which you would be building using either Java or Kotlin, whichever language you've chosen. And when you're using Android Studio, some of the things that you should know are the concept of activities and activity life cycles, and how activity states are handled. So what is activity is what you would start with. Then what are services, its types, and its life cycle. Life cycle basically means when is a service created, and what happens when we are using a service, and what happens when we want to kill or destroy a service. Then content providers, its operations, workings, and creating. And then handling app configurations. So different app configurations, suppose you have to take permissions from the users for using your camera or using any other location or contact details, how to handle those things. We generally do that using a manifest.xml file. And so yeah, that is also important thing that you should know. Apart from that, also understanding the concept of a context. So this is also important to understand. And so now let's go to the next part, which is using third-party libraries. So how to include libraries from third party into our app. Then writing a robust code. Now till here you've written a great app, but there's always room for optimization and making your app a bit more better by helping it store whatever data you have better, which can be done using shared preferences, file systems, and databases. So this is basically to store data in different forms. Learning multi-threading, so basically doing things in the background. Debugging essentially means if you go wrong somewhere in the code, how do you read those errors and fix it by yourself, either search it on Google, go to Stack Overflow and all. And also logging. And the last part is keep learning. So even although we have covered all these things in the video, there is always chances for much more improvement. So keep learning. And after doing all of this, you get the bragging rights to say that I am an Android developer. So let's just quickly revise the whole roadmap, shall we? You start with mind to tinker with Android development. First thing that you do is pick a language to use, Java or Kotlin. Then you pick up the fundamentals of the language and the IDE that you use. Here we've considered it to be Android Studio. And then after that you use version control to help you manage your apps better. Then you use a repository hosting site so that you can store your apps online, so that you can use it later or manage it better remotely. Then you conceptualize the app. You think about what the app is going to do and all the features included in the app, and you make a proper wireframe. Next step is building the application layout, basically the UI of the app, followed by building the logic of the app, and then finally writing a robust code to store data in much better way, and writing much more concise code. And in the end, keep learning, and with this you become an Android developer. So with this we come to the end of the video, and thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more.